Did the Bears tank the final game of the season and conspire with the Houston Texans in order for Chicago to end up with the first overall pick, paving the way for them to get rid of Justin Fields? Okay, there's a ton going on there, and I know this theory's a little bit out there, but just hear me out. Let's start with the Bears, who obviously tanked the last game of the season. We know this because they benched Justin Fields, citing an apparent hip injury, despite the fact that he finished the previous game healthy. So that's a little bit sketchy. Regardless, they lost, did their part, but they needed help from the Texans in a Texans win in the last game of the season in order to secure the first pick. But on the other hand, why wouldn't the Texans just tank themselves? They have the first pick locked up. All they have to do is lose. But they didn't. And I think the reason starts with their head coach, Lovie Smith, who had meetings with team management in the week leading up to the final game of the season. That more or less puts the writing on the wall and basically suggests that he's going to be fired, regardless of the outcome of the final game, which was proven because despite them winning that game, he was fired literally the same day as the game. So all incentives for him to tank are out the window, and the incentives for him to stick it to the Texans in the final game went way up. So what ended up happening was, late in the Texans game, they converted two pretty miraculous fourth down conversions and scored what would have been the tying touchdown, but they decided that they were going to go for the 2-point conversion and the win, in which they obviously succeeded and they got the W, pushing them down to the second pick. But the key here is the 2-point conversion. Not necessarily that they got it, but just the fact that they went for it. That suggests that they went out of their way to try to win the game in a situation where they had every opportunity to lose. So Lovie Smith wins this game. It hurts the Texans. But more than just being the second pick, the problem is they're in a situation where they more or less have to take a quarterback with their first pick. But being the second pick, I went back and looked at the last 15 drafts in which the first quarterback taken in every draft was better than the second quarterback taken in all those drafts, except for 2 years. In 2017, Patrick Mahomes was the second quarterback taken, and he obviously has been better than Mitch Trubisky. And the other year was in 2013 when E.J. Manuel was the first quarterback taken, and Geno Smith, the second quarterback, has turned out better than he has. Those are the only 2 years where the second quarterback was better than the first. And the Texans are in a spot where they're going to have to take the second best quarterback, which would require them to invest multiple years likely into this player and set them back for years to come. But that kind of depends on the Bears taking a quarterback with the first overall pick. But they have Justin Fields, so why would they do that? Well, they might not be convinced that he's the guy for their future. I mean, after all, he did have the second highest interception percentage in the entire NFL and fumbled the ball more than any player across the league. So there are some concerns over whether or not he can be the guy who can lead them to success in the future. More importantly than that, they might just simply look at this draft and think that their guy is in there. And if they think that their future franchise quarterback is in this draft and they have the first overall pick, how do you not take him? So they're kind of put in a spot where maybe moving on from Justin Fields is the right thing to do. But regardless, getting to the first pick kind of seemed like it just fell into Chicago's lap. Like they got really lucky. I mean, they did their part. They lost their game. But they couldn't count on Houston winning. Houston, the worst team in the league, winning their final game to secure Chicago the first overall pick. Unless they had a connection with somebody who could influence the Texans game. Somebody like the Texans head coach Lovie Smith, who also happened to be a former head coach for the Chicago Bears. So what my theory is suggesting is that the Chicago Bears colluded with Lovie Smith, who, as we mentioned earlier, knew was going to be fired before the last game, in order for the Texans to avoid tanking and take every measure possible to win their game, while the Bears intentionally tanked to lose their game, resulting in the Bears getting the first overall pick and the opportunity to move on from Justin Fields and take their new quarterback with the first overall pick. Well, that's my theory for today. Thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. Please consider liking and subscribing, as I'll have new NFL theories coming out shortly. Thank you so much.